doing that, I'm not touching anything else.
All right. So, okay. So before your mic cut out, I was asking like how you were able to discern Kokomo's past in something I hadn't written that I didn't even know. So, and you'd said something like, her kind of personality kind of called out and said no, no, and that's when your voice cut out.
Oh yeah, it was just like I could I could see it for what it was. Like she was just the reason she keeps looking past the relationship that she's currently in is because it's like, yeah, this guy will do for now, but he's still not what I'm looking for. Like she
Mm.
was looking for the person that her father should have been to her. And so it's like, oh, maybe this guy. So I'll sleep around with this guy and maybe he'll be the right one. But then it all winds up backfiring on her every single time. It's like, and Dusty could see that too. For all his faults, he could see that. He's like, I'm not the one she's looking for. It's someone that's not me. Like the sleeping around thing, that didn't bother him. Like, because he knew that that's the type of person she was. But he didn't leave her because of that. He left her because he's like, this kid, this is probably the one.
Mm.
So he left her and then makes it known more than once to Tom that, like, hey, she's available. You probably have a chance with her. More than once. Like, hey, if it was just like a nudging, ribbing kind of joke, like, hey, maybe you got a shot with her. If he only said it once, then I could get, like, okay, maybe that's not his MO here. But then he says it multiple times. I'm like, I get it now.
Mm.
Like everything he does sets it up. Diving off the ship. Why are you going to dive off the ship? Because you know that he has the means to come save you and that he will do it. So you dive off the ship. Tom becomes the hero in her book. And then he leaves her. And then Dusty leaves her on purpose. So it's like all that sets up. And it's, I see what you're doing now. Okay.
Your picture froze.
But he's much more of a complex person than people realize.
Mm-hmm. Your picture froze on my side.
More complex of a character than I think you realized. And I mean, her slightly more because it's like being the captain of the ship is one thing, but like having her sorted past too, it kind of gives her a more full rounded picture.
Mm-hmm.
But then, like, the more I read him, I'm like, man, this guy is just like, he's deep. And then I think just started chapter 46 now. And he says, uh, you know, not Garrett, what's the Garland is telling Kane to keep an eye on him because, he's not sure yet if he's on their side. I'm like, he gets it. He understands. It's like, I don't know what this guy is up to.
Yeah. Yeah. Man. So I went back on our discussion, and at the very beginning, you had said the burden of what Dusty is called to do is overwhelming, and this makes him want to be done with the ship.
Yeah.
His family lineage requires it. And I said yes, but I'd love to know where you read that because I don't recall stating that.
You didn't have to state it explicitly. He did. It's
uh,
like his lineage is, well, I mean, look what his father does,
mm-hmm.
right? So that's kind of in his family lineage. Is he's supposed to be there to show people what they're capable of, and it's just that sometimes it's too much for him. That was one of his motivations for jumping ship too. It's like I can't keep doing this. and I think he goes through spurts of that. He probably deals or has dealt with in his past depression, like deep depression. And he probably still has spurts of it here and there, but he comes out of it laughing and having a good time about everything because that's the only way that he knows to deal with that.
Yeah. Man, it's so different. It's so different talking with people about these characters because they become three-dimensional.
Yeah, it's just, well, I mean, when you consider like pastors' kids, how many of them go on to actually become pastors? It's like a 50-50 gamble, right? But they
Yeah.
always feel that, like, oh man, I should have done this. Because, especially if their dad's a good pastor, when they're just like, oh man, I should have done that. Because, and Dusty feels that too, like, maybe I should have went to seminary. Maybe I should be a chaplain. Like, he knows that deep down, but his lineage is to kind of help mentor and tutor people.
Hmm.
It's just too much for him sometimes.
I'm going back over the chat and trying to find. There was another like huge aha moment. Um, let's see. So you brought up the mentorship kind of relationship between Dusty and Tom, and you said it seemed a lot deeper.
Yeah, I think it does. I think, like, if he was just mentoring him to take his job when he leaves the ship, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like Dusty already doesn't like the job that he has. Why is he going to train this kid to, like, why is that his whole purpose with this kid is to train him to take the job? It's like every single time he talks to her when he's off the ship, how's the kid? How's the kid doing? Like, he wants to know. And it's more than just like oh, well, if he dies, then I have to find somebody else to take my spot. To me, it's crying out more than that. Like I said, the things that he does for Tom are very specific. He's like trying to show him, like, okay, here's this way, these things that you need to do to be a better person. I think he was trying to make sure that Tom was set up and had enough money to be able to just quit too. Like, if he had his way about it, Tom and Kokomo and him all would have been off that ship. It's not just, and he has to remind himself of that sometimes because he says it, quit thinking that the kid is just a thief or just, like he has to keep that in his mind. Like, no, there's more to this. I'm doing more than what is, what would be necessary for me to leave.
Mm-hmm.
It's like he reminds himself of that. Explicitly at least once, but probably more times than that. And he's doing the same thing with Garrett, in my opinion. Like, they come in and they tell him about this program, and Garrett's a little hesitant, but in his mind, he's thinking, kid, you're alive. Like, that's not something to scoff at, and I want you to stay that way. But he's also unsure enough about these people that he's like, all right, I'll throw my hat in the ring too, and I'll kind of follow along just to catch a glimpse of what they're doing, to see what they're up to. And it's very conspicuous that his dad hasn't been around since he was in the hospital. That's why I say I think he's working on the outside, keeping track of what they're doing out there, and probably telling Dusty what they're up to. Even though you don't explicitly state that, that would seem to be the case to me.
Yeah, and I'd been playing with the external, trying to figure out exactly what's going on, because there's a bit of a three-tiered system. Like you've been going over that something's not quite right with Bill, and uh, the the things that he knows is just like, how does he know these things? You know, what access does he have? What's his relationship to these people that are pulling strings behind the scenes? And so it's like a three-tiered system. He's like, I'd call him a disgruntled member or something. Like, it's just like, I don't feel like you guys are doing this right. And so he's trying to do it differently, but while operating within the system. It's weird. Yeah.
Well, and it didn't strike me until I was reading about Dusty's aunt that went missing or supposed dead in the 90s.
Hmm.
And then I got to thinking, wait a minute, that's when Bill's dad was working with Gustav. So his dad had something to do with his aunt's disappearance. And I'm like, and then the blue skin, I'm like, holy crap. It's not that somebody came along and found his dad's work and recreated it and made Sky Fever. No, Bill had his hand in on making Sky Fever. That way, there's a problem that's being presented, and on the other hand, he's going, I have a solution. He creates the problem so that he has the ready-made solution at hand. It's like, dude, really?
And the and you can see the connection with Garland, between Garland and Kokomo, because um, so when he hired them, he thought that their like number one guy was going to be on the job. He had no idea it was the novice that was going to be going on that mission.
Right? It's just like, oh my gosh.
So either way, he still would have gotten he still would have gotten something out of it, but the but he rolled with what happened because it played into his external character of,
Yeah.
hey, I'm trying to help.
Mm-hmm. That's why I'm like, man, he's so good at bullshitting everybody. He bullshits Frank. He's bullshitted all these governments, and it's like they can't see the fact that he created the problem and the solution both. It's like, man, he's so good because you want to believe that he's trying to do the right thing, but at the end of the day, it's just like, no, you know better.
Well, and that's the thing. Like, until you said it in the way that you said it, that's the way I had written him, as he's trying to do the right thing. But that's the thing with characters who, I won't say he's the villain. I wouldn't say that. I'd say he's just trying to do things. He's trying to do things, and sometimes they don't turn out so good. But that's the problem with a lot of folks that try to do stuff like that, is they end up looking villainous or doing things that people would consider evil and things like that, and they don't think that they're doing anything wrong.
Right. Well, and his story is a little bit easier too, because like how long did these people that his father was working with fly under the radar? When you're talking about the '90s genetic modifications until now, and it's like he's just disgruntled at this point. Like his father did this great work, and nobody knows about it. So on the one hand, you can see his his frustration level is just like, okay, I just need to push the lever. I just
Mm.
need they need a nudge in that direction. So I'll just push this lever. We'll just release this thing and have a ready-made solution. What I don't get is why Gustav has the prosthetics. Like, did he come into the program needing prosthetics already?
No, that's an old injury.
Oh,
Um,
okay,
yeah, that I,
okay,
I haven't gone fully into his past, because um, he escaped uh, from he escaped from the from behind the Iron Curtain, and so he started doing odd jobs, and one of his mercenary things, like, he had stepped on a landmine. So
ah, okay.
yeah.
Okay, I got you. That makes a little bit more sense now because I was like, why the prosthetics? Like, is this another layer to Bill where he's just like jacking with people? And yeah, okay, that makes sense. But yeah, once I saw, well, once I made the ant connection when he was like, oh, and she had blue skin, I was like, holy crap! It's like, wow, okay. Because I had the same thought, like, oh, Bill's trying to do the right thing, you
Hmm.
know. And then I read that, I was like, wow, you really did that, didn't you? I can't believe that.
Well, and she was perfectly fine the first time you met her.
Yeah,
She was perfectly fine. Do you know when you met her the very first time?
no, I can't remember. When was it?
It was the heist. She was the
Oh yeah,
receptionist.
that's right. That's right. Huh.
That's why he why Tom kind of recognized her a little bit and was just like, what, who does she look like, um that kind of thing. She looked like she could have been Dusty's grandmother or something, and it's just like, yeah, it was. it, I tried to figure out a good way to introduce her outside of her initial setting at the cabin in Florida, and when the receptionist thing popped up, I was just like, oh, this is perfect.
Yeah.
um, because I could also put her kind of staunchy, like stuck up personality in that. Uh, let's see. Oh, and then you brought up that uh, it was getting into the ethics of genetic manipulation and things like that.
Right. And it's like, that's a problem that's not going to go away. It's a
Hmm.
problem we still question, you know? It's like, it goes deeper than just cloning, right? Clone a sheep. Okay, well, that didn't turn out the way we expected, but we learned something. And now we have CRISPR going on, talking
Hmm.
about editing the human genome. And it's like, but to what end? Like, where does it, where does it stop? It's like, does it just stop at trying to remove genetic markers for predisposition to diseases? And then when you do that, like, are you going to create unintended consequences? Is a new one just going to pop up?
Hmm.
And designer children, like people being able to choose everything about their baby, it's like, are you sure you really want to do that? Like, it's questions that we have to ask. And I always say it, it's we get so fascinated with, oh, we can do this, but we're not stopping to say, should we do it? Like, that's a big question.
Yeah.
That's why I like the fact that you bring it up, because it's relevant today and it will be relevant later. Like, it's not going away. People are always going to have these questions about it.
And at the same time, as far as the story goes, it's kind of like it's this dangerous thing, but it's also the key to the future.
Yeah,
It's just like, how do you treat that? It's like a key made of glass. Like you got to be very careful in how you unlock this thing.
yeah, exactly. Well, and it wouldn't be the key to the future had Bill not created the problem in the first place.
Hmm.
It's like he had to create the problem so that the key was there. It's like, if he didn't create the problem, the debate would still be going on, and yet he effectively ended the debate.
Yeah,
There's an old saying that goes, when in wintertime, the question is not heat or no heat, it's how much heat. Well, he effectively made that question null and void. It's not like, can we or should we? It's just like, how far do we go? Where's the line? Because we're going to do the thing. Now I just need a red line in the sand that says don't go past that.
Yeah.
Like he ended that. It's like, God, he was brilliant in doing that. And an evil genius kind of like, but brilliant nonetheless.
Yeah. Yeah. And your thought about trading the agent for Cole um, was so much more helpful, because I kept trying to figure out a way for Cole to be fine, and he had no access to Sky Fever. Like he wouldn't have had that. It wouldn't have healed him from his injury. He would just be dead.
Yeah.
And but I wanted Cole as kind of a malevolent figure later on, but I couldn't figure out how to do that cleanly, because if I had just said, "Oh well, he got it back then, and that's why he wore tanning and all that stuff," like no, he was just narcissistic.
Yeah.
But he uh, using the undercover agent instead, really frees up that line of the plot. Um,
Yeah. And Cole just, for what it's worth, shoots him and not, or sorry, Dusty shoots him instead of Cole. And it's like, problem solved.
mhm. Yeah, and it really goes with the pattern of he's got people on the inside all over the place, and like, which explains why he can get folks across borders and stuff like this. And so having an FBI agent working for him, and then the guy trying to free them from the jail bus is a dirty cop. It's just like he's got folks all over the place that outside of working for him would look completely legitimate.
Yep. And it completely fits Cole's MO too. Because you can't, he wouldn't inject himself with the stuff with Sky Fever.
Mm-hmm.
He values himself too much. He's too important for that. I can't have any of that business. But would he be willing to send one of his dirty cops, his FBI agent, for the drop off of the uranium? Yeah, because why is he going to handle the uranium himself? If he's not going to inject himself with Sky Fever, why is he going to handle the uranium himself?
Mm-hmm.
Like, he has people for that. Because, I mean, if he was going to do that, he'd be willing to just go steal the stuff himself, too. But he's not. Everybody has a place and a purpose.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense now. Yeah, because why would you expose yourself to uranium? Like, even in a lead-lined box, like, why would you even put yourself in danger like that?
I want to know how it got overlooked in the truck shipment.
Oh,
Unless it was purposely overlooked by that soldier.
well, it could be that, but it was in a they were shipping a desk, and
Uh-huh.
and in the desk, if you were to go through that desk or look in the compartments, it would look like there's nothing in there. It's a rabbit in a box trick, where they're stashed slightly out of sight but with a mirror. And so if you looked at any of those boxes, you wouldn't see anything.
Okay, I got you. That's why the soldier says it's empty.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, I got you. Because I felt like that was important. Why did Dusty ask him, did you check the drawers? Like, at this point, he's wanting the whole thing to stop. And he doesn't, he risks himself getting caught to end it. It's like, geez, man. He keeps trying to do the right thing, like over and over again, trying to do the right thing.
Mm.
And to the naked eye, it just looks like, oh, he's just a smuggler. but he keeps trying to do the right thing. It's like even with Susan, isn't that her name?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I've read so much I was trying to remember what her name was. But even with her, it's like, is she happy with this dude? Yeah, okay, leave it alone then. Like, it wasn't for her.
Yeah.
It's like, man, every time he turns around.
Yeah, she like it's that, you know, she thinks she loves me, that kind of thing. It's just like, yeah, but if they hadn't run into each other, he would have avoided her altogether.
Oh, yeah.
But you know, but you know, at the same time, he needed a place to crash, and so it's like, okay, well, I'll I'll sleep on her couch. Um, I won't go anywhere with the relationship. You know, I'll just kind of I'll kind of tease her along, and then she'll realize that she doesn't want me.
Yep.
Because you know he just keeps out for, externally it looks like he's sabotaging himself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It does, but he's going about it for the right reasons. Now it's just like, man, this, I don't know. And to go back to him shooting the agent instead of Cole,
Mm-hmm.
think how quickly he was pulled over and arrested. It's like it makes sense that he shot an agent and not Cole, because who knows how long Cole would have been dead there before anybody would have realized it. And then they have to try to make a connection back to him. So it's like, good luck with that. But he shoots the agent and they're on him pretty quick.
Well, he shoots the agent and they're on her patrol. She's the cop.
Yeah. And I get that. But
It's just like,
it seems like had it been Cole that he shot, he may have gotten away with it. Whereas with the agent, not so easily.
mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because they don't realize that that's a dirty cop.
Because originally it was a lot more convoluted, because originally I had set it up where Kane, and you don't know it's Kane, but Kane is on the other side of the street in another parking lot. This is a real place. Like I went down on Google Maps and found this place. My best friend lives right around the corner. We actually went there and visited the last time I went and saw him. And he's in the back of a van, and he's there to kill Cole at the orders of Bill, like kind of tying up a loose end.
Uh-huh.
And Dusty has no idea what's going on. He's talking to Cole. They're, you know, riffing back and forth, and Cole turns away, and then 3 holes go through Dusty's windshield or window on this side, and Cole drops. And so Dusty gets out of the car, runs around it, and like there's holes following him, and he has no idea where these gunshots are coming from because he can't hear anything. Like there's no blasts. And so he tries to save Cole. He like drags him into the car trying to keep down, and he takes his shotgun out of the glove compartment and, you know, blasts back at where he thinks this gunfire is coming from, and the gunfire stops. And he doesn't know he doesn't know what's going on. And so he goes across the street and he finds the van, and he notices some of the pellets had peppered the van. He's like, okay, so this is where I was shooting at. And he opens it up, and there's a body in there, and it's an FBI agent. It's not Kane.
Oh,
And so he thinks he killed the FBI agent. So that was the original setup. but the more and more I kept going at that angle, the less sense it made because of where Kane was at that time.
Right.
And so I had to change the scenario entirely, but still have the same outcome.
Right.
And Kokomo's pregnancy, I was just like, wait a second, if she got pregnant on the job, how would Cole feel about that? And so then I went with, okay, so Cole is going to get rid of her because she's just going to be a liability, having a kid and all this stuff. And because, she's got to focus on the job and she can't focus on the job with the kid. And
Right.
so he's going to get rid of her or the kid, and Dusty can't have that.
Yeah.
So I guess trading it off third hand and knowing that the agent would tell Cole that Kokomo's pregnant, then he would have to get rid of the agent.
Right.
Yeah. So I got to rewrite that, but yeah.
Yeah, and he gets rid of it. But something that I'm not sure he was considering at that point in time is, was there anybody in that crew that would have thrown her overboard, considering what Tom did for them? Because they're alive because of Tom. Like, they survived because of him. Is there anybody on there that if Tom would have stepped in and said, no, you're not throwing her overboard, that they would have challenged him? I don't know. I highly doubt that they would have challenged him at that point. It would have just been like, no, we're not going to do this.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that's in the heat of the moment. He's not thinking about that. He's just like, she's going to die if I don't do something.
Mm-hmm. Well, and Cole has resources, and he doesn't know how deep those resources go. Like, he could just have
Right.
them shot. It's just like, doesn't even have to be something that can be intervened, like throwing somebody
Right.
over the ship. It's just like, no, if she's shot. It's just like that's instant.
Yep.
So yeah, so it's a giant gamble, the entire line of thought.
Oh, yeah. And that's why I say it's just like an emotional thing that he shoots. Like, it's logical, but it's also emotional when he shoots the agent, because it's just like, he probably knows it's an FBI agent. He's working for Cole. So, like, there's an aspect of it. Like, okay, dirty cop working for this guy probably deserves to get shot in the first place. But then there's also, in the back of his mind, he's trying to consider, what happens if I shoot an FBI agent? Like, what does this mean? I'm trying to get out of this whole game. If I shoot him, that means I have
puts him
a
on a
high
huge
probability
list.
of going to prison. And it's like, well, okay, but I still have to do this thing because Tom and Kokomo and that child are more important than my needs right now. So shoot him. We'll see what happens.
Mm-hmm.
So
he's conniving, but he doesn't think of everything.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so that's a very spur of the moment issue for him.
But he's thought it out far enough to know that he's doing the right thing.
Yeah. You said Dusty doesn't fear death. He fears being emotionally vulnerable. Since his mother's passing, he became stoic. When confronted with the death of a loved one, he became a raw, open nerve of anger, not angry that the person is gone, rather angry because his emotions might flare up.
Oh, yeah. Like, you see that in the encounter in the bar where he stabs the knife through the phone. It's like he's not as pissed off that Slips died. It's more like, here goes this thing again, and I'm going to get emotional about it. And, he fears that more than anything else.
Mm-hmm.
It's like he puts his life at risk all the time, but man,
But the one time
deeply
he's
afraid.
not there.
Yep.
And it's the same thing that happened to his mother. Is he wasn't there, like he couldn't do anything for her. There was nothing he could have done.
Yep.
And it's these situations where there's nothing he could have done. It's the same thing. uh well, I don't think you've gotten to that point yet. um but it happens again later with a friend of his. It's just like it, it happens over and over again where people die where he has nothing to do with it and he can't help. And it's
Yeah.
just that that is his number one fear. Like, you could say it's snakes, but no, his number one fear is losing people when he can't help.
And he's had plenty of encounters with snakes so far.
Yeah. Yeah, the snakes. I talked to Mercury the other day, and went into I went into Dusty's encounter with snakes and the anxiety attack he goes through. And because Mercury is very familiar uh, with mental problems, and and so when I had described both Dusty's depression and his anxiety, he said, "You do you ever have these thoughts? Do you go through them?" And it's like, well, the anxiety, yeah. Like, I suffered from anxiety personally. um, and it impressed me that somebody else had done, like, to a much higher degree, but it impressed me that somebody else had done the same thing I did, because Mercury said got into uh, he got into a way of figuring out how to let his condition wash over him instead of stewing in it. um, and that's what I had done. uh, Watching the biblical series is that in watching one of them, I was in the middle of a panic attack while I was watching it, and I was like, okay, okay, so how should I think about this? Because, like, I had kind of integrated all that psychology. I'm like, okay, so I should think, what should I do? And uh, I said, well, I'm alive right now. I went through this. I had a whole month of this back in when we lived in Michigan. So I know what this is like, and I know that I can go through this for a very long time and still survive. So that also means that when this is over, I'm going to be alive. So I don't have to be worried about it, because it's just going to pass. And
Mm-hmm.
I had that thought very quickly, and I was just staring at the screen, and I just went, okay, that means I'm going to do absolutely nothing. I'm just going to finish watching this video. And I just let the anxiety wash through and peter out.
Mm-hmm.
And I there was such freedom in that moment, because up until then I had no idea what to do about it. I would always, like, freak out and start pacing around and then call somebody to make sure that I don't die alone and that kind of thing. It's just sheer panic. But in in writing that down, I'm like, okay, so how do I convey that in writing? uh and when I initially went through it, I didn't know what was going on. And so that's like, okay, that needs to be what happens. And so somebody asks Dusty, are you having a panic attack? And he says, I don't know. He doesn't know what's happening. All he knows is that he does not feel good, and he, and something just jumped out at him from the mirror. It's like there's something wrong. There's
Yeah.
something seriously wrong, and so he needs help. And it's like, yes, that that's accurate.
Yeah. But yeah, he has a lot of encounters with snakes, doesn't he?
Yeah. Yeah. And that only gets more meaningful the farther this story goes, as far as like the rest of the plot, not just this book, but like the story in the future, is that his encounters with snakes gets more meaningful and harder to deal with instead of easier, because he gets exposed to them more, which is supposedly the cure. Um, but the manner at which he is constantly exposed to snakes is uh, is a lot more nuanced than here's just this creature that you can't negotiate with,
Yeah.
and that is trying to defend itself and therefore trying to kill you.
Yeah. Yep. And I mean, yeah, it's been good so far. I reading that, but I was just like, man, this guy's got a thing with snakes. And then I realized that at the truck stop, Bill is the one who threw the snake into the truck at him. Bill was there at the truck stop. Remember, that's where they first met, and he offered Dusty a job.
What would his motivation for putting the snake in the truck be?
To get him out of the truck.
But he didn't know but he was
Well,
already out of the truck. So,
when Bill meets him, he's out of the truck, right? Was the snake in the truck with Dusty, right? The snake's in there with him
yeah.
already. Think about it this way. Bill goes
Okay.
up, knocks on the door. What's stopping Dusty from just shooting him dead? Like, he doesn't know him well enough to know, like, okay, I take the chance. If I knock on the door, he might shoot me. If I try to get in there and wake him up, when he wakes up, he might shoot me. But I really need to talk to him. Oh, here's this non-venomous snake. If Bill's not afraid of snakes, toss a snake in the truck. He'll come out of there real quick. Dusty comes out of the truck, fights off the snake. Who's there? Bill. Standing right there, waiting to talk to him.
Well, and Bill is the one that made the snake attack him.
Yeah.
Accidentally, but the reaction, he didn't. So like he couldn't have known that Dusty would freak out the moment he said snake, but when he did, his loss of eye contact with it made the snake strike. And so, like, up until that point, Dusty was relatively calm and was like kind of okay with trying to get the thing out of here without any incident. And I felt like that was a very Dusty thing, because it's scary, but he was being mature about it. And then because he had the encounter before, but at the first time he had encountered the snake, it was a practical joke.
Yeah.
In his pocket. And so that he can literally laugh off. The second one is, okay, this is freaky, but I'm just going to deal with it. The third one just comes out of nowhere and is attacking, like not letting up. And so it's a steady escalation.
Yeah.
Of trauma.
Yep. Yeah, it was Bill's way of getting his attention.
Well, and that's funny, because the study of snakes get our attention. Like the lower part of our eyes can see snakes and spiders and stuff like a lot better than most other creatures, and it's like, well, yeah, snakes draw our attention. So
there's a reason for that.
Yeah.
There's a reason for that. Pretty sure it's pretty old and written somewhere. Snakes get your attention. But yeah, I don't know. I find it weird because for me, I'm not as afraid of them. I'm
Mhm.
very good at picking out venomous versus non-venomous, and so I don't have a real healthy fear of snakes. I have a respect for them, but not a fear.
Mhm.
But then when I read it, I'm like, okay, yeah, I get that. I see how that can be the case.
Yeah. And the next part that you brought up was the not so subtle ramp up of executions.
Oh, I mean, that one made complete sense to me. Like, here's the governor. He's ramped it up to what, 2 a day at this point?
Hmm.
It's like he's in on the pay cut because he's meant to be dead. Even think about the fact, like, even if somebody reported that he had pardoned Dusty, it's like, well, you just pardoned him posthumous because he's dead.
Hmm.
So they're just like, oh, okay, well, you just pardoned him of that after he's already dead. This is not a big deal. He's an untraceable soldier now. Garrett's an untraceable soldier. It's like, how many more did he do that with? How many more is he on the pay cut for?
Yeah.
Like, because you have a problem with not as many people signing up as recruits as Bill needs. Here's a bunch of people that are already scheduled for death. If they don't die, they come out of this thing alive, and nobody knows that they're not dead, then when someone like Kane goes to visit and say, hey, here's a proposition. Like, you can join this program, and not only will you be healed, but you have a job, you've been pardoned, all this goes together. It's like now you have a ton of untraceable soldiers. And as long as they're the right people, Bill's going to be kind of selective, but
Mm.
as long as they're the right people, you've got untapped potential for having untraceable soldiers.
Well, and the other side of it is he could be, so the governor's on the take, and then and he's doing this kind of recruiting thing, but he's not doing it for Bill. He's doing it for himself because
Oh yeah.
he's hedging his bets,
Oh
and
yeah.
and Bill knows about this, and so he's cherry picking
Mm-hmm.
from the governor's crop of uh, personal bodyguards.
Uh-huh.
And so that, and it made perfect sense the moment you laid that all out. And I was just like, I had wanted some specific areas in the US to be like small enclaves of survivors, that kind of thing. And uh I was trying to figure out, okay, so what's Florida? Is it the connection to the Mars and moon colonies? Is it like this kind of stuff? And then I heard the other day that they're doing SpaceX out of a different state entirely. And I'm like, okay, well, I could probably do that with that one. But I'm like, so what do I do with Florida? It's such a hotbed for this story. What do I do with it? And when you brought that up, I was like, I know exactly what to do with it now. It's the new Australia. It's like a penal colony
Yep.
with all these crazy, ex cons from death row. It's just like, well, yeah, this makes sense. And then you move forward in time a little bit, and you wonder why this really heavily fortified, why there's a really heavily fortified place in the middle of Florida for no reason. It's just like, no, there's somebody did that on purpose.
Yeah. Exactly. But yeah, I read that. I was like, oh, when I was reading through that, I was like, that son of a bitch. Governor did it. It's like, oh my God. How many people does Bill know that are in on this? It's like, because he knows plenty of people that have no idea what he's up to. They think, oh, this peacekeepers thing, this is good initiative, all that. But then there are other people that know what he's really up think Dusty's caught wind of it, and he's like, okay, I'm going to go along for this ride and see where this goes. If only because he's trying to keep the Garrett kid safe. Because returning the favor, Garrett got him across the border. So it's like, I got to watch out for this kid. Like, here he did this, he did this stupid thing, but I got to watch out for him.
Yeah, and I wanted the story of this to be, what if the what if the main character was an Obi-Wan character. Like I had so many tropes that I wanted to pour into the story. Like what if the Joker was a good guy, and what if the main character was actually the mentor?
Yeah.
And it really solidified when I had introduced Tom, because Tom was a later introduction. It was just between Dusty and Garrett for the longest time, and I felt like there wasn't as much of an attachment, because I was just like, well, why is he doing this? Why is he why does he care? He's just running into this guy, and so and he only spends a few weeks with him as a cellmate. It's like they don't really get that close, and Garrett doesn't really open up. So it's like, why would he care about him? And so with the addition of Tom, it brings this whole character forward of he's that mentor type, and he's just found another guy.
Yeah.
And so
it's like every time he thinks he has an out, like, okay, I've done my job here. I've saved Kokomo. Like, good deal. Okay, that's done with.
Mm-hmm.
And, he's thankful that Garrett got him across the border, but he thinks in his mind he's never going to see him again. It's like, oh, nice kid. Yeah, whatever. Well, then he shows up as a cellmate, and it's like, here's this guy again. And then they both get executed on the same day and survive it. And it's like, this kid next to him in the hospital bed. Here's this kid again. And it's like, okay, obviously the kid's not going away. So now what am I supposed to do with this? It's like,
mm-hmm.
Well, here we go.
Yeah. And
so it's like every time he finds his way out, somebody else steps in, and it's like, or gets in his path, and it's like, okay, well, one more, and he just keeps doing it. It's like part of him begrudges it, but then the other part is like, who is he without it?
And these are the semi-success stories of him trying to do this, because you hear about his background with, like, why do people not want to work with this guy? Like, all of his partners die.
Yeah.
It's just like, oh, why? What's up with that? And he's like, well, he keeps losing these people that he's trying to mentor.
Yeah.
And it's just not working out. And so he's like, okay, instead of just mentoring everybody, I've got to find the right person.
Yep. And then on the ship comes a kid who he knows a little bit knows about his father probably, and what his father did for a living. And he's looking at this kid and thinking he's got a lot of potential. Like, and just keeps watching him. Like, I can see that he's been watching him. And it's like, okay, I'm watching him, but he needs a little push in the right direction. So he dives off the ship. Not a very smart move. Most people would think, but he's hedging his bets that Tom's coming in after him.
Yeah. Because he knows he's on the night watch.
Yeah. And then he's got to figure out, like, okay, now what do I do? Then he's got to offer him the job of working with him, and then he's got to watch him. Like, none of it is really about him being a good thief. He's doing it so that he can watch his character the whole time. Like, what kind of kid is this? Like, is he gonna get a thrill rush out of doing this? Like, is this the only thing that's gonna matter to him? And if so, like, I'm done wanting to mentor this kid.
Yeah.
Or
And
does
when
he
they're in the
have-
truck, like, can he stay cool under pressure?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's his character like? Does he have integrity? Like, those things matter to Dusty more than he wants to let on because he's a smuggler. But yet, you know, all that stuff matters to him, so he's watching the kid while they're on the jobs and, like, really paying close attention, not because he needs him to be a good thief necessarily, but, you know, he's watching out for him. Like, okay. And I think he's doing the same thing with Garrett. He's a way better shot than what he was showing off at the range. Way better. But he needs Garrett to shine and not him.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, and it kind of goes into even the selection of gun that they have. Because, like, it's all this obscure stuff because, you know, Kane's this crazy revolver collector and he's just, like, obsessed with revolvers. But with what he gets, he gets a shotgun, basically. And it's like that is Dusty's personality. Even the Derringer he has, it's a 410 shotgun.
Yeah.
Everything he has is a shotgun. It's a scattershot of potential in a cone going in one direction.
Yep.
He has no idea what's going to hit, but he goes with it. And but the thing that he's handed is 45 Colt. Well, Colt is a single bullet. It's not a shotgun. It still works in that revolver. I think it's a Governor. It still works in that revolver. But if you watch any reviews or anything like that, you watch somebody shoot 45 Colt out of the tourist judge or the Governor or whatever, it's got a weird consistency of shooting high.
Yeah, it does.
Because it's got to jump this huge cylinder gap and then get into the rest of the gun, and, like, the gun's recoiling while the bullet's still going through all of this gap. And it's just like, well, you're gonna throw everything high. And so it's just like, so even with a single potential, you know, he's throwing it up, like, just it's like, I didn't realize how deep the analogies could go, even with the tools at hand. Like, here's something that I want your input on. Why does he carry a sharp letter opener, instead of a knife?
Easier to conceal. Like, even a what do they call it? I always call them a boot knife. I don't know what they're called in other parts of the country, but even a boot knife it's a little uncomfortable to carry down that low. And a letter opener, easier to conceal. Not many people think about it. You pull it on, they're like, what's this little thing? And then you stab them with it. It's like, oh, that's what it is. And it's fascinating to me that he even carries that, because stabbing is an up close and personal. It's usually a very emotional crime. A stabbing is, because it's very up close and personal. You don't find it that much with people that are on a non-personal basis with the other person that they're intending to kill. So I don't think he's ever used it. Like, I could have seen him using it on Cole. If he would have went through it and killed Cole.
He used it once on one of his old partners that was trying to get money out of him.
Right. Very up close and personal.
Yeah.
That's why he chooses the shotgun. The shotgun gives him distance from his victim. He's he's mentally distancing himself from that. Like, this person is not worth the knife. This person gets the shotgun because they're not worth my time. So he has to distance himself from that victim. Whereas if he's going to stab somebody, it's going to be somebody very close and personal with him. And that's why he carries that. Because a traditional knife, you can either stab, you can slit their throat. Even slitting somebody's throat isn't as personal as stabbing them, because you're pushing it into their flesh and pulling them in closer to you.
Yeah.
So psychologically, he carries it because if he needs it, that's the purpose he's going to need it for. And it's going to be, it's going to be a very personal reason that he has to use it.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas with shotgun, like I said, it's just a distance thing. And everybody knows if you're in a hairy situation, you're going to be better off with a shotgun because it's spray and pray. You know?
Yeah. Especially if you're running away.
That's why I asked, am I going to be using buckshot? And Kane tells him, well, not for this. But he wants the buckshot. It spreads better. Kane wants him to use slugs to try to be as precise as possible. And he's like, I'm not about the precision thing. I just want to spray as much lead as possible. Because he's already thinking mission, and Kane's like, I need to train you for the mission. He's like, no, you don't. Just give me the buckshot and I'm good. You know? Like, that's where Dusty's mind is. And Kane's like, no, that ain't working for me.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like, I can't qualify you with buckshot. I don't know because where you're aiming with buckshot.
Everybody could qualify with buckshot. I got to make sure that you can hit a target. If I need you to zone in on one target and hit it and not kill 15 other people around.
Yeah.
Like, okay, I'd much rather kill the other 14 people, but all right, fine.
Yeah. And there's a character that I really want you to analyze, because he seems like a giant trope for me, because he was kind of he was an external character that kind of came in later, that I kind of built up over time. What do you see in Kane?
I don't know. That's a little tough. I haven't got a good beat on him yet, because part of me says he's just a typical anarchist. But yeah, I don't know about him yet. I got to read into him a little bit more.
Yeah, and I think that gets deeper a little bit later. So yeah, I'll hold off on that question. What do you see in Garrett?
Well, I mean, he's definitely had daddy issues, but not a lot yet. Really, be quite honest. Like, he's typical soldier that was willing to take orders, but I don't see much past him yet. I'm not quite sure what Dusty sees him, other than the fact that the kid just won't go away.
Mm-hmm. Let's see.
How long we've been going?
What's that?
Oh, I was wondering how long we've been going.
My
kids are probably ready to go fishing.
Oh, okay.
But I definitely want to do this again once I'm in to, like, be able to analyze Kane and Garrett a little bit more. Because I know there's something to Garrett. Something more than just, he won't go away.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there's something more to him that Dusty sees. I just don't know what it is yet.
Okay, so how far are you in? What chapter are you on?
Just started chapter 46.
46. Okay.
Yeah.
46. So I'm trying to remember what's going on around there.
They just got their missions. Like
Yeah.
at the beginning of 46, you see Dusty on his first mission. It's like the very beginning of the chapter. And it's kind of funny that you put in there that that North Korea is allowing for people to come in and watch them dismantle their first warhead. It's like you
Well,
put that in at the time. It's like right after, you know, I'm sure you wrote it beforehand, but now Kim Jong Un is dead, and it's like it kind of throws North Korea up into a balance of like what kind of person is the next person going to be, like personality wise? Are they going to try to flesh things out with the U.S. or not? Like it's very telling. So when
yeah.
you add that, I'm like, oh, okay, this is interesting.
The North Korea thing, like I had thoughts about it, and then the like when I was fleshing that idea out, he had the meeting with Kim Jong Un. I was like, oh, okay. so I, so I can go like, okay, so what if some positive comes out of this? Like, what would that scenario be? And and the idea behind like, okay, we're gonna do this in good faith, that kind of thing. But there's a lot of internal tension going on, and
Yeah.
like,
Well, because it's North Korea.
yeah,
I mean, so yeah,
yeah. So that's a very I liked writing that. I liked writing that mission, but I didn't like I did and I didn't because I knew what had to happen, and so it's just like there's there's so much in this. Like it's their first mission, and Dusty's Dusty's let's see, Garrett's in North Korea, Dusty's in Japan.
yeah,
So so they're like right next to each other, and then you start running into people, and it just it goes it goes kind of nuts because you can't have Dusty around and have not something not go insane.
yeah, that's true. That's true.
Yeah. So
Well,
46. Uh, shoot. Uh, I can't see the chapters. Chapter 40. It's strange. What page does it say it's on?
I didn't pay attention to the page. It's weird trying to read it on my phone because I can't
Oh,
even tell you now because now that I closed out of Google Docs, it starts all the way back up at the top every time. There's
oh,
no way to
okay,
bookmark it.
okay.
Yeah, he says something about he uh, throws his overshirt and his mission briefing down, and that's as far as I got before I was like, okay, I gotta stop for a little bit.
Oh, okay. So you haven't. That's okay. So that was the briefing. Yeah, that's right before that. Um, so you haven't gotten to the panic attack yet.
No,
You're about to read that. That's yeah. So uh oh, okay. Yeah. So I was asking a little bit ahead. So there's stuff that you're going to read in the next couple of chapters that kind of clarifies the things that I've been asking.
that's fine.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, you want to try to do this again next week?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
What day can you do that?
We can do Saturday again
Okay.
if that works for you,
Yeah. Totally.
and I'll probably be done with it by then, knowing me. So yeah, I should be done with it by then, and we can just kind of discuss the rest. But of course, I'll keep sending you direct messages on Discord when I come across something. I'm like, oh, that just makes it easier for both of us to be able to bookmark it and go back and look.
Yeah, yeah. Real quick, I want to ask you, what do you think of the short chapter format?
I like it.
Yeah, I wanted to do that because I have such a hard time sitting down and reading something, and so I felt like,
If it's short chapters, you can be like, okay, I can, I've got time for just this chapter.
yeah,
And if it's not like 72 pages of one chapter, you can be like, oh, okay, yeah, I can get through that.
yeah,
I'm the
yeah,
same way. It's like, it's hard, but I've found this one to be a quicker read. And it's maybe just because I'm more engaged. Well, same way with Lost Book. I'm just so much more engaged with the characters because you did some of the same stuff he did for me, which is you didn't tell me who the characters are. You didn't define them so close knit that I can't look at them and be like, oh, this is what you're up to. Oh, this is who you really are.
mm-hmm.
It's like I can't read Stephen King novels anymore. I used to be able to, but he will describe to you the rock in a way that it's like it can't be anything else but just a rock on the ground. It's like the level of detail about the rock. It's like, no, give me some room to explore. I need to,
Yeah,
like what world have you built out here?
yeah. It's it leaves no room for metaphor.
No, and for me, I can't read a book like that. But
Mm-hmm.
if it's just you're throwing in a bunch of random people and it's like here's some stuff they did, then I'm be like, oh, this is what you're really about. Oh, this is what you're up to. Like I know the author says this, but I can see what you're up to. I know what's going on behind the scenes there. It's like it's inviting the reader to actually be invested in the character rather than just reading about the character.
Mm-hmm.
It's like they become invested in it, which makes it all the better.
I've heard some people say, like, well, I don't understand, like, I don't understand what's going on here or here. It's like, well, just keep reading, and
Yeah.
like, well, I don't know what's happening here. It's like, well, just keep reading. And the thing that I wanted to do with this book, as far as the style goes, is I really wanted to be able to trust my reader. Like, I really didn't want to treat them like an idiot,
Right.
because so many times I've read books and they go back over this situation that happened over and over and over again, and they'll re-describe it and go back into the pain. And it's just like, just stop. I know what happened.
Yeah.
So I wanted to trust the reader.
Well, you've accomplished that so far.
Well, thank you. I'm glad to hear you say that, because I was worried for quite a while. It's like,
No, you've accomplished that for sure.
all right.
Okay. Yeah, I feel like that's a good place to stop.
All right.